Hello, everybody. Hope everybody had a great Christmas. I certainly did. Ate a little bit too much food, pretty lethargic, pretty stuffed. But, had a great time, and I hope you did too. So, looks like we might be taking Greenland. That'd be interesting. Not sure if it's Denmark or Norway that owns them, but maybe they need the money, maybe we need the territory. Whatever happens, I hope Trump sends the Florida Derlewanger Brigade to Greenland during the winter. That would be the best possible call. That'd be very funny. I can't believe Chunky Yogurt is sucking up to MAGA. That guy is just the worst. Oh my gosh. The most, like, hooting baby of a leftist is now like, well, you should be able to have a beer together. I like beer. That's terrible, chunk impression, but I can't do Turks. I'm sorry. Anyways, I'm glad Anna Kasparian got out of that because that's just embarrassing. The guy stands for nothing, and he genuinely thinks he's going to be president someday. Just like Ted Cruz, he thinks he's going to be able to skirt the laws being born outside of the United States and just slot himself right in there, like nobody's going to notice. Oh, people will notice. You know, people thought that I was pro BLM at one point. I don't think there's ever a time when I said anything to that point. I never supported the BLM organization. I always knew that from the time that they weaponized the Kendrick or the Lamar kid with the Skittles and the tea and the Hispanic guy that was getting attacked and shot him. Ever since they weaponized that, it's nothing there. There's nothing that's worth looking into that. But between Chauvin, who had shot a guy before, who was very obviously a piece of shit and enjoyed, doing what he did, and George Floyd, who had stuck a gun to a pregnant woman's stomach and was in general a scumbag, but very obviously was not on fentanyl when he was doing a little dance in the store. So all of that's extremely confusing, and you really don't have to choose a side in that. And BLM will force you to choose a side. And identity politics is exactly what they injected into Occupy Wall Street to break that up. And it's very interesting because they seem to do that in my own home state, in my own home county, despite the fact that we had 0 Black Lives Matter protests in my county at any point in time. There was a march for a military veteran, Gregory Edwards, who was killed by the police by being maced. And after he was maced, they didn't wipe his face off, and they put him in a spit mask, and then they hogtied him, and then they threw him into a cell when he was hogtied with a spit mask on him, with mace all over his face, and he asphyxiated to death. And then they wouldn't release his body to his family. So God only knows what else they did to that man. And my local sheriff, Ivy, is one of the worst. He's a big, fat baby who also gets off on terrorizing people and has sold our entire county down the river to this horrible scumbag Commissioner Brian Lobert that took complete control over the county during 2020. And then our county has been completely downhill ever since. This little creep got caught talking about how he wanted his political opponents to have their children killed in abortions, and, well, he started blocking everybody, me included, when I was just laughing at him, very simply. He's a very sensitive little man, and then after he ruined everything in our county, he dipped, and that's that. So Ivy is personally responsible for letting creeps like that in. He's ultimately the gate guard, and he sold us down the river. But to anybody who listens to this who thinks that I am a BLM, because I know that there are, that thinks that I'm a BLM supporter, I'm not, and I never have been. I just let that slide for so long because it's absurd that people aren't willing to do their research before they assume things. But I can assure you, I've never supported BLM in my life. Machine-worshipping labor humpers got 4 terms of FDR. 4 terms. Why shouldn't Trump be able to run a 3rd time? Why? I don't see any reason. I don't care about the one little law that was passed You know, that's one law compared to the history of our country, which is democracy, which is if people want the guy in, if he does a good job this term. And I'm not saying he will. I can't read the future. But if he does a good job this term, why not? Let him run a third term. Screw it. That's what I say. You know, those machine worshipping labor humpers make me sick. All they care about is things like factories and tanks and cities and vehicles, and basically every single labor leader is like a Jimmy Dore or a Michael Moore, some idiot with a megaphone blaring at people, blowing people's eardrums out for no reason, just because they're deaf because they lived in a factory breathing in metal dust. You know, if that's for you, man, if you're a blacksmith, pound away. I'm not gonna stop you. I think that's cool. But if you want to create an entire society that focuses on the worship of metal, which is idolatry and anti-Christian, you do not have me on board. We got the humanities as a concept from Prussia. That's where the first humanities courses came. And I've explained on the podcast how Prussia was a Masonic project that brought together a bunch of disparate nations with different cultures and even different languages, and then flattened out all the things that made them special and good and replaced them with just Prussian blue. It's very Masonic. But human resources comes from the concept of humanities, and that's exactly why you can replace morals with what's in a book. That's exactly why you take a humanities class and you're more insane and harder to deal with than before you took it. And if you're concerned about things like HR making people's jobs significantly worse and not benefiting anybody, you have humanities and the Masons to thank for that. You know, it really sucks to live anywhere in Pomerania or Stuttgart or Wolgast, or especially in the Kaliningrad Oblast, which is Prussia proper, the Teutonic Order, in the area around Danzig, the free city of Danzig, also the essential diplomatic capital of the Nazi Empire, of which JFK's father was a visitor and a diplomat into Danzig. It's something a lot of people don't know. But it really, really sucks to be in Pomerania, from the Swedes to the Lutherans to the Teutons to anybody else, to the Danes. You know, you're a statistic if you live in Stettin. And that kind of sucks. Oh, some cool stuff that comes out of that region, though, is runic. Runic is a type of glyph, and there's 3 glyphs in the world. And 2 of them, actually, I'll list all 3. The first, Egyptian glyphs, hieroglyphics. Second, Chinese. Those, especially if you go way, way back in the development of the language, the glyphs in the Chinese language resemble very much the Egyptian language. And then the third, the latest to develop, was the Germanic glyphs that developed about 2,500, 3,500 years ago in between that region. They're pretty recent when it comes to glyphic languages, but it's very fascinating in that it is a unique form of glyphic language. So the priestly caste developed that themselves and then attributed Odin hanging upside down from a tree to cipher the runes in the snow underneath him by, drawing all the blood to his head. Something about the Germanic cultures is they actually really do they value bodies hanging from trees more than any other culture, and that's very likely where the concept of lynching came from. Mind you, let me tell you something that I learned, especially from the book of Redux 2033, I believe. It's the one where it's in the Metro 2033, the book. That when you're lynched, it's a slow, drawn-out ordeal, and essentially what happens is your organs rupture. That's eventually how you die when you're being lynched. When you're hung, as in a gallows, and the floor drops out from you, it breaks your neck and kills you very, very quickly. It's far, far more humane than to lynch. So all those Confederates that lynched black people for no reason tortured people for no reason. And they did it, I believe, in a ritualistic pagan rite. And there was actually a recent court case where I believe a young girl was lynched and tortured in the same manner by Wotanists. And as I described, Guido von List was the creator of Wotanism and Ariosophy, and that is the Lucy, the missing link in between Theosophy and the Nazi Party. You know, the Jacobins. They tried to just completely and utterly ruin France. They created their own stupid little calendar that would have really screwed them up when it came to interacting with any of the other societies around the world and made them a backwater that had been pieced apart and conquered by other nations. But Napoleon said, nah. Napoleon was too cool for that. Napoleon got rid of that calendar, and he reinstituted the monarchy through the empire, and he was the emperor. And he started off in the Revolutionary Party, but he just decided that it wasn't going the way that, you know, it should for the betterment of all French. And, you know, I think he did a really good job. I really respect Napoleon. And if you look at where France started off when he took power and where France was when he ended power, their diplomacy was much better and their finances was much better. He established the Banque de France that eventually ended up getting destroyed by the Rothschilds. It's very likely that he was assassinated with arsenic after being sent to St. Helena. Arsenic is a Rothschild copyright. It's kind of like their trademark. It's their thing. The calling card. You know, the words found in permafrost are things that I've been seeing recently. That's a very terrifying sentence. It's supposed to be permanent. It's supposed to be ice that stays there. It's permafrost. And we've been finding little animals in the permafrost, like mammoths and stuff, and horses and stuff like that. And that's pretty terrifying, in my opinion. You know, it's gonna open up just as when the Mongols, like, really exploded out of the area that was thawing, and Russia, in the same way, exploded out of the area that was thawing. That area is, just like with Greenland, is gonna be, you know, real estate soon, somewhere down the line. And it's gonna be much, much better real estate than the real estate around the equator, which is burning up at a rapid rate and solidifying. It's becoming saline because of the amount of oil extraction techniques that dump salt into the area, like all around the equator, and that's really bad. That's really bad. There's no longer the sort of heat-resistant flora to soak up the heat, transfer it into calories to grow bigger, and then create a shady zone that can trap moisture and keep things cool. You know, the entire equator is going up. And a lot of the elite child sniper brigades in Israel are going to turn out the exact same as Chris Kyle down the road, you know? Completely and utterly insane. You know, they got their little day in the sunshine, but ultimately they have everything to worry about now. And they're not better off. Nobody's better off. Except for just a couple of people that they themselves are not spiritually better off. Biden giving the Taliban equipment to defend their borders was the only glimmering oasis in a sea of bad decisions. It's the only little bit of water in just a nightmare of conflagratory fire. And I can genuinely think about that. I can genuinely think about Biden withdrawing from Afghanistan completely and then leaving equipment there and breathe a little sigh of relief that the good guys who destroyed the opium fields are actually going to be able to make it, you know. It's a miracle that Russia is still Christian after all that it went to, but there was a mustard seed of hope and Christianity and love inside of the hearts of the Russian people that made it so. You know, here in our modern society, we do a lot of things to try and protect people, but it's very funny how backwards and backhanded they are and how they're actually seemingly there to hurt people more. You know, like hate crime laws that only exacerbate the tensions between races. In a multiracial society, it's not necessarily the sort of thing that makes things better down the road, but it is a way of extracting money off of individuals and filling up more government seats. Censoring words through the FCC by going beep, but still allowing people to have that sort of attitude and showing it through the music industry and through Hollywood to young people, teenagers, less than children. That just leads people to fill in the words in their heads. They just fill in the blank. They're just like, oh, what goes there? That's a question. That beep is a blank spot for me to fill in the blank. And then they have it internalized instead of it going past them like water. That loud beep that it grabs their attention makes them internalize the curse word. And that's why they use crutch words that normally people wouldn't want to pick up because they only cheapens their ability to communicate with people. Last time our country was really united was during the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge. And it's funny, Trump, he made his water gold, but it looked like pee-pee. It was so funny. But he's also a Chad for doing the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge on top of one of his towers. That's pretty cool. That was the last time our country was really united from the left to the right, was everybody was dumping ice on themselves and going, ah! And it's funny, so-called free thinkers, when they have a bucket of ice jumped on them. Because, your body will instinctively try to contract and get more temperature pooled to the core, and that's why you get these spasms when you're in the cold. I suggest anybody take a cold shower if they don't remember exactly what it feels like. It's good for you, and it's good for your pores to take a cold shower too. Cold water is very, very good for your skin. Speaking of water, the ley lines. Oh, the ley lines, parallels. Ooh, They actually run along mountains and rivers, always have. They don't run along these imaginary crap that the Spanish and the English like to put in line. Those are the worst borders ever. They're terrible. Cut right through anything important. Who had real borders is France. They had what it was called, and they were known as the Octagon because they had a bunch of mountains and oceans and rivers that they were divided by. And that actually allowed them to, unlike the melting pot of Germany, solidify a culture, solidify a language, lingua franca, which dates way back. The word Luigi, the name Luigi, means a mighty warrior in Old Frankish, but it's an Italian name. However, Italian and French, they say French is vulgar Latin, but it's much more complicated than just vulgar Latin. It's actually more of a proto-Latin. Like, a Latin is like a combination of 5 or 6 different languages. It shared a culture through the Etruscans. If you want to look into the Etruscans, we found out lots more about the Etruscans recently, in recent times, in recent years. I used to talk about the Etruscans and history with a guy named Jan Hus on the Kiwi Farms chat, but he ended up getting his PhD and leaving because, naturally, it's incredibly immature, especially when they wrote a bot to tell me to shut up every time I talked, and then I found an exploit where I'd type in a certain thing, and I could type it in really, really quickly, and I would just get people to flood the chat with shut up Nates. It was very, very funny. Just how impotent some of the guys on that chat room website are. It's very, very funny, especially the ones that gravitate towards the chat room. I used to be the nurse in the chat room. I used to give people health advice. I used to, enlighten people with little tidbits of history and fun facts and just random thoughts of the day. But most importantly, I was the nurse, and that was when I was most happy on Kiwi Farms, was when I was giving people health advice. People would come to me if they were sick, and I felt really good about helping people. The last person I helped was a guy named Twinkletard with his arthritis, and I felt really, really good because he was a really nice guy. And I miss that guy, but I miss lots of guys lots of guys and girls on Kiwi Farms, and it's the past. And one of the things I hate Null, I really genuinely don't hate Null. I hate his behavior. I hate what I watched him become. I hate his actions, but I don't hate him. Specifically because I'm better than him. I don't go around hating people all the time. That's what makes me better than him. And he always fashioned himself as some form of Napoleon, but that is laughable. That is laughable. France was saved from obscurity by massive amounts of collaboratory conspiracies and coup de grace. That he managed to save it from obscurity and obliteration. Null, you are no Napoleon. You got a lot of grinding to do, buddy. Oh, P.S. Don't eat oysters. Oysters are the filters of the water. Don't eat oysters. Don't be the filters. You'll stink. All right, guys. Takes care today. Hope everybody has a good one.